And of course, the bird can only repeat what it hears. So you're seeing language filtered through a bird, but the bird is only telling you exactly what it hears in this trailer out in the desert.
Please welcome Jeff Griffin.
This is how I lived back in, what is it, 9807, back when I had an actual film camera. And I was living out of my truck, and I would always park my truck going out in the desert like this. I'd park it so the sun would rise, you know, I knew, put my cot in the shade so I can get some extra sleep without the sun fucking bothering me. And eventually I upgraded. I got like a tent, I don't know what they call these things, like a tent truck. A truck tent, I don't know, something like that. It was a beautiful setup though. An air mattress in the back, you know, and at this time I graduated from University of Nevada, Reno, and I was just looking to get the hell out of civilization, away from people. Not you people, the people in general. You know what I mean, right? So this is an interior shot. So, you know, I got my Nevada map and like an interior, exterior thermometer, you know, gives me the temperatures, and of course the bottle of 10 High whiskey and a cooler full of beer. Old Milwaukee is what was being drunk at the time there, but that was my home. I'd come back home to my parents' place for, you know, like 3 weeks, something like that, and I'd work out, I'd get myself back into shape, and then I'd go off for a week or two and just go off and be alone. And when I was doing that, I couldn't help but find strange shit. Like this. You can't really see it too awfully well, but it's dated 9/20/07, and it's Hammer had a beer. Or maybe it's Homer and then had a beer. I don't know, maybe it's his name. Homer had a beer on this day. I don't know. I couldn't figure out this object. So along with it, I found this pair of thumb cuffs that were rusted shut in the same exact area. And I didn't know what to make of it, right? I was at Art Center College of Design at the time, pursuing an MFA in visual art. And so this was my studio, and this is not a piece, this is nothing. It's just something I needed to think about, so I pinned it to my wall and thought about it, and I couldn't figure it out. So I only spent 2 and a little bit extra, 2 semesters at Art Center. And one of the most amazing critiques I had was when I would just bring bags of papers from the desert and legal documents, love letters, and just strange things that had been discarded out there, right? And so I remember this one critique. I don't know, you know, everybody else was doing sculptures and paintings, and we could have a great critique about those things. And I don't know, I brought back a bunch of shit from the desert and put it on a table just like this. This was in my studio. Also, it's my jail cell. I was living out of my studio at the time. But this is what the critique looked like. I pretty much just laid everything out on the table and said, like, here, I don't know what to do with it, but let's talk about it. And the consensus was there was many professors there, and a lot of brilliant students, and they loved it. You know, they loved it. It was amazing personal things that were just tossed out in the desert for whatever reason. But the consensus was, okay, now what? how do you present this? What's the, okay, you put a bunch of stuff on the table. We don't know what to do with it. It's fascinating. We love it. But what do you do with it now? I didn't have an answer. So I had my first show at Art Center, which was also my last show. I didn't know it at the time. But so they said, you have this particular gallery space. And I was racking my brain trying to figure out what to do. I had no idea. And the only thing I could think of is get the hell out of LA. LA bothered me. It's a shithole of a town. I absolutely despise it. And so I would Mark, you wrote about this in the afterward. I would oftentimes just be in my parking lot, and I'd be drinking a big can of Foster's, one of those the oil cans, the big ones. I'd just be in my truck, and I'd be looking at the San Gabriel Mountains, and all I could think of is if I could just get past there, if I can go over there, I can get to Barstow, I can get to the desert, I can just be alone and away from Pasadena, and even worse, Altadena. So I had no idea what I was going to do for this show. I was struggling. So I made this kind of constraint for myself. I said, okay, go off for 3 days, whatever, the weekend I think it was, and I had to install on Monday, and whatever I came up with out there, that would be the show, no matter what. If I found nothing, I'd be screwed. If I found something, I just had to make it work, right? That was my constraint. So I went out around Barstow, places like this. It's just like a one room, one door and one window, nothing else around. I didn't find anything here, but these are the places I was investigating. And then I would come to improvised trash dumps, because people oftentimes treat the desert as a trash dump. Got a couch I got to get rid of. I don't want to deal with the dump and all that. Just dump it out in the desert, right? But also there's a lot more interesting things than just couches. So I think it was on a Sunday, like the last day, I was freaking out. I didn't have anything for this show. But I came upon this area, and I found a photo envelope of developed photographs that had all been discarded. They were tossed out and blown, as far as you could see, into the creosote bushes. And the only thing that was left in this photo packet was the negatives. And so it clicked with me, All right. I'm going to go back to Pasadena. I'm going to develop these negatives, whatever's on them. I'm going to blow them up by, 8 by 10 and put them in the gallery. That's going to be the project. A conceptual sort of endeavor. So this is what happened. And I love this, too, because the photographs ended up being mostly a trip from people who lived in Barstow, but took a trip to San Diego, and most of the photographs were of the ocean, and it was great because everybody had this expectation, knowing me there, like the desert guy, right? The stereotype. So they were expecting a show of desert shit. And I went and it's all photos of the San Diego coastline and these people's journey there. And I always like to tell my students when I teach them, everybody has expectations. You have expectations no matter what situation you're in. It's always great to fuck with expectations, right? People are expecting a certain thing. You can fucking kick their ass the other way and surprise them. That's what I did. And people were like, what? I don't get it. And I got slammed for that one on the left there. Because I told the guy, I just went to some Walgreens, whatever. And I said, develop all the photographs. Do not clean them. Do not mess with them at all. Leave all the residue, the environmental damage that had happened to them. Leave that all there. and print them all. So it was like 24 photographs. And so one of them was like the one on the left, just a film. And during all my critiques, they're like, "Yeah, you're being pretty arty." It's like you're trying to be an artist, but it was a conceptual project. Just whatever was on there, print it. And so a close-up of one of the photos. And this woman is amazing, and there's so many details. You, again, you can't see it too well here, but you can look at her coffee mug and you can deduce, like, okay, she is from this particular area because she has this mug, and there's all sorts of evidence. And then this cat, this is the one that pretty much made the show. I mean, out of everything, there's a couple photos of the woman, but a lot of photos of bridges and the ocean. But the cat is what made it. It's just so statuesque and surreal in a way. And then this happened. I got this Post-it note on my studio door, and long story short, we weren't supposed to have alcohol on campus. Let's see. They changed security companies because the security company that they were using was corrupt, and they were stealing flat screens and projectors and all these technology things. So they're like, "No, we can't use you anymore. Get a new security company." And they did, and the security company didn't understand that we as graduate students on our own campus, you know, like the undergrads were up in the Rose Bowl area, and we were down in our own separate area. And they didn't understand that the grad students were not to be fucked with, right? So they had to access my studio to get to some electrical panel of some sort. And when they did so, they found a lot of bottles of whiskey, many cases of beer, and they're like, "No, this violates policy." They dumped it all down the drain. So I learned. And that was like the straw that broke the camel's back, because I was struggling there. I was becoming more interested in language and poetry in particular, and not so much the visual aspects of art. And this happened, and it was ridiculous, and I was pissed off, and I did get refunded. They gave me $250 or $300 worth of whatever they dumped down the drain. But it was clear at that point, you know, get the hell out of there. Which was scary because it happened right about this time of year in October. So I went back home. My dad came and like rescued me. He came down with his trailer, which like fell off of the truck somewhere like in LA, which was a total disaster, and I had to go down to Ace Hardware and get a pin or something for it. It was a nightmare. But anyway, he rescued me, brought me back home. I got all my stuff, just went back home, and okay, now what do I do? I'm interested in art. I'm interested more so in writing. I'm also interested in environmental studies. I don't know, and I wanted to apply to another graduate program, but I didn't know what direction to take, and I only had a very short period of time to figure it out. So I narrowed it down to poetry. Okay, gonna do poetry. I narrowed it down to the programs that didn't require the GRE because I didn't have the time to take it. And thank God Iowa was one of those programs. I applied to 17 programs and got accepted to Iowa. Galvin's not here, is he? Is Galvin here? Oh, fuckhead. I always wanted to say that because in a seminar with Galvin, he called me a fuckhead. So, tit for tit. But yeah, I got the call. I was accepted to Iowa, and Galvin called me, and he said, "Jeff, we don't have classes in dumpster diving, but I really hope you come here anyway. He really understood the work, and it was interesting because it created a little bit of buzz within the faculty. Like, even though I presented found papers like this, transcription of a notebook, right? And above there, I would say this is a transcription of a notebook dating to the 1950s. It details the Budgie's linguistic development. And even doing so, just being so forthright, people didn't believe me. They're like, no, this is fabricated. You're a poet. You're trying to do something with us. But Galvin believed it. Other people didn't. Galvin did, you know. Anyway, long story short, I got into Iowa. And this was the work I applied with. It's found papers from the desert. This is a notebook from the 1950s. Like I said, Budgie is talking, right? And the people list every word that it can say on the left, and then the context in which the word is used on the right. So it was fascinating to me, and I had this when I was at Art Center too, and I didn't know what to do with it. I printed it out as a transcription, and everybody loved it, but they're like, again, what do you do with this? How do you use this? Some pages were blank, like F, which I think is just beautiful. And so you get to like a page like this, and the third line down, whiskey, misspelled. Where's the whiskey, Delbert? So you come to learn through this notebook that it's Barbara and Delbert that have this bird. And of course the bird can only repeat what it hears. So you're seeing language filtered through a bird, but the bird is only telling you exactly what it hears in this trailer out in the desert. And like, yeah, where's the whiskey, Delbert? So you know that has got to be Barbara saying that. Where's the whiskey, Delbert? It was fascinating to me. So, got into Iowa, and I would go and, well, I turned in a found notebook from a guy that was going through AA, and I found it in Los Angeles in an alleyway, and I turned that in for my first poem, and it created a little bit of a buzz. It's like people were stopping me. They weren't even in my workshop. They're like, did you really find that? Is that real? Or like, what the hell? And I'm like, yeah. But I knew I couldn't go through Iowa doing this all the time, because we would be having the same conversation in workshops over and over and over again. So I turned to my own writing. I wrote my poetry, or whatever. And it wasn't until I had my first advisor meeting with Jim Galvin, where I turned in like a manuscript, proposed manuscript for my thesis, and he said, Jeff, this is fine and all, it's all good. This could be fine. He was basically indifferent. He said, this is good, but you're no Hunter S. Thompson, and you're not. God, why am I blanking on the name? Jesus' son. Dennis. Thank you. You're no Dennis Johnson. You're like trying to be, but I don't believe you. And basically, he told me it was bullshit. And that was a big wake-up call for me. And he told me that there was a particular type of genius in the found objects that I applied with, and that I had presented in my first workshop. And he said, do that. That would be a manuscript. That would be a thesis that would be unbelievable. And even went as far as saying, like, this would sell more than any book of mine ever would, which I doubt it. But it was an amazing thing to hear. So when he told me that, yes, I forget when the meeting was, but I still had a couple like breaks, like winter break or spring break or something. And I went back home, and I would go out and find all this material, bring it back to the garage, bring it back to my apartment, Jeremy's couch, Jeremy's old couch, and I just bring back piles of this stuff. And so, yeah, I went out there, and like this place was outside of Fallon, a little east of Fallon, Nevada, and just a busted up trailer, right? Just weathered, and the people had deserted it, looking from behind, and the inside just trashed, just deserted, and a nice 3-foot Barbie doll leaning up there, a gun rack up top, and like Marianne and Stephen Forever, and this is where the material comes from, and this is what came out of it. Both husbands, the ex and the now. I just love this to no end. And it's funny, right? But the book will break your heart. There's funny moments, but mostly it's like going through a nightmare. But, I mean, this guy is like, he's got his keystone, right? I'm guessing he's the now. and this guy's got whatever drink that he's got, and he's just like staring off into space, and who would ever think that a photo like this would be possible? The truth is stranger than fiction, right? That old saying. And images like this. One of my best workshops ever was with Jim Galvin, and we talked probably over an hour about just this image. And we had the critique that I always wanted in art school. We had it here. And I mean, dissecting it down to a gnat's ass, the hand coming in, the fact that the girl and the bunny, they're the same color, and the bunny wearing bunny slippers that are all dirty. Like, I don't know how else to put it, but like, what the fuck? And then, sorry to bring you down. Yeah, then there's a guy that's on his deathbed, and the family is kind of gathered around, and whoever had this photograph scratched out that woman's face because who knows, and you got so many elements in this photograph, right? And the little boy holding up his hands in that gesture, and then his father, I'm assuming, or whoever he's sitting on that guy's lap, the look in his eyes will break your heart. It's just like, it kills you. And then at the same time, you got the people over in the right. They're like, yeah, all right, deathbed, having a good time, all right. And then of course there's poems, and this I think is my favorite poem of all time ever. Alone without you. Sitting here without you kills me more than smoking. Oh, how I miss you so, but hate you so. I wish you was here, but dead in a ditch. Oh, how I miss you so. I miss them nights when you're with me, hugging and holding so close to your side. Oh, how I miss you so, but wish you were dead in a ditch. Right, it's technically terrible, as a poem goes, misspellings and everything, but what it has is just a pure emotional response. Like this person needed to get it out of them, and they did it, and it's so powerful because of that. So I met with Mark after graduation, and he's like, yeah, I'm kind of interested in maybe publishing this. You should try for bigger publishers, though, that can get a wider reach. But, I would be really interested in this. And that blew me away right upon graduating. I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, yeah. So I graduated. I went out and spent that summer and that fall getting rid of all the filler material. The stuff that wasn't that emotional or heart-wrenching, the random things. edit that stuff out. And I knew what I had to find to fill and make it a complete manuscript. And so this was in like the central portion of Nevada. This trailer, there could have been another trailer that they gutted and they just put big piles of trash out there, and you should see it. The trash it blew downwind for miles. It was amazing. And I went to 29 Palms, east of 29 Palms, Jackrabbit Homesteads out there. And then I went down to the Salton Sea and the Slabs, which is a beautiful autonomous area where people, sunbirds, as they call them, they go down there in the winter to stay warm. It's right close to the Mexican border. And you basically do whatever you want there. There's nobody policing you or governing you. You just camp wherever, do whatever. And Martha Hertz dogs. This is all the fascinating stuff that couldn't go into the book. Not actual objects, but just, you can't really see it too well, but Half Pint will castrate your dog. And just seas of clothing and trash everywhere. I went down to Yermo, California, and I found crowns and an actual piece of a person's tooth that they were saving, and then just buildings that just haunt you. They're absolutely haunting. Brittany Loved Mom, and handprints, and these things, and on the other wall over there, and the broken heart, up top there. Greedy, 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 greedy. And on the interior, this is what you get. And it just, what the hell went on out there? What the hell? I want to be where your boot walks, because maybe before you step, you'll look at the ground. These are the type of places where I found this work, while nibbling the pebbles. Again, it's something that didn't fit in the book, but I mean, my God, just finding that abandoned out there, crazy. So yeah, to fill in the gaps, I found work like this, and it's so interesting to me because this guy is romantically involved with her, I'm assuming, because he's got his hand wrapped around her and they're laying together, but she is also in the picture, and she's got her leg somehow like posted up like this, yeah, I need to be close to this person, I need to be on this guy. And how to set a table. I never get to do what I want to do. Everybody gets to do what they want to do but me. And then all crossed out in pencil, who knows when, later, And then images, photographs like this. I can never figure this one out. I'm assuming, the guy looks like he's in his swim trunks. I'm guessing he's jumping into a body of water. But just the angle of it, perfect, 45-degree angle, right? And you have no idea what void he's jumping into. Anyway, most of the stuff I found, 99% of the stuff, just receipts, mundane stuff, bills. But this is the material that I was after, and it's a hell of a... It's tough getting it. Yeah. I have no idea what to make of this. Again, we could have an hour-long workshop just on this. What is she holding in her hands? Are those her hands? No, because the kids don't have hands. So she's holding a can of Coke, maybe, or a beer, and an apple. And she's so goddamn sinister looking, running after the kids. I mean, damn. And like an image like this. I love this one. This guy, okay, maybe it's her birthday, it seems like, birthday cake, and he's rubbing his hands together, you know, like, okay. And she's hand on hip, like, oh, I know what you're thinking. So, it's a mystery. It's one big mystery. I found this, and it blew me away when I found it. I'm sitting here, backseat of the inevitable, as I think of all the fragments of this place that as a whole are what is currently occupying the minds of whoever else. I found that, and I'm like, you're talking to me. It's like almost like you knew that this was going to happen. Like you have some sort of clairvoyance or something. You knew somebody was going to find all your trash that you left behind, and that sent chills up my spine. We should probably end there and take some questions, right? Okay. I'll hand this over to you. Go over there. Yeah.
Okay, if you have a question for Jeff Griffin, raise your hand and I'll bring the cordless mic your way. Okay.
I haven't read it and I don't know much about you, but I was wondering if you ever had any worries like with the AA guy's diary, if you felt like you ought to keep his secret, or with any of the things.
That's interesting. Keeping a secret, yeah. No. With the exception of that notebook that was found in Los Angeles, all of these things I found were purposely discarded. So there was no like, it wasn't like I found a trailer and like, yeah, break in the window and like go in and steal their shit. It was all stuff that was purposely left behind, either dumped just because they want to dump their trash out in the desert, or because they abandoned their homestead or their trailer and just either died or moved on to something else, you know.
Why did he call you a fuckhead?
Why did Jim call me fuckhead?
Yeah, you remember?
I think it's a reference to Dennis Johnson, but I'm not sure. But the context, we were doing a seminar on James Merrill, and I don't know how it came up, but we were talking about Tucson, and you know, he's like, "Who's been to Tucson?" And I don't think anybody had except me. I rose my hand. I've been to Tucson. He's like, "Oh, you've been to the what is it? The Desert Museum, whatever they have there." And he said, "You've been there, right?" I said, "No. Sadly, I haven't. I'm more interested in, you know, areas outside of the town." But then that's when he said, "Oh, you fuckhead." No, I've never been. My parents did, though. Yeah. I rolled my truck off the highway. I was supposed to be down there. I probably would have gone to the museum, but I rolled my truck off the highway, and that's a whole nother story. For another talk.
The photograph of the bunny costume.
Yes.
Being. When you brought stuff like that to workshop, did you precede it with anything, or did you just bring photographs of copies of the photographs for everyone and just hand them the photograph standalone?
It was always preceded with, you know, in italics at the very top of the page, I found this photograph in this area, you know, and this time. So it was not just presenting a random object. It was like, no, it implies my journey and finding it and everything. So it was always prefaced with that, you know, just trying to be completely honest.
How often did you go, like, to Nevada and like search around for like these different things?
All the time. I live there nowadays, and I have since second grade. And I wasn't always searching for stuff. I mean, I think I was conceived out in the desert. I don't know. My parents were married in a ghost town out in the desert. For all I know, I was probably conceived out there. I like thinking about that. Yeah, I unfortunately now I'm teaching composition and whatnot. I got a job and responsibilities and things, so I can't get out there as much as I want to. But when I graduated from University of Nevada, Reno, and I had a couple of years and thinking about applying to grad school and whatnot, I was out there all the time. That's what I feel like my home is. I don't feel comfortable around people, except you people. I feel very comfortable around you guys. But society. Really. Yeah.
This is sort of another ethics question.
Yes.
I'm wondering what you think about the ethics of like framing these people's experience, because you're sort of asserting a non-authorship in a lot of ways. But you have arranged this material and you've put it into a book and you're presenting it to a sort of specific audience, which often doesn't include these people. And so I'm just wondering what you think your responsibility is in terms of the way that you're framing these experiences.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never thought about this until the book actually was published, and I held it in my hand. The fact that there are images that face one another when you open up the book, this page and this page, and before that it was just a manuscript. It was just like each image or each poem or whatever on its own page, and then you open it up in book form, and there's relationships that happen between the images. As far as ethics go, again, I feel good about it because there were lots of trailers and homes that I went to that were locked up, and there was no getting inside. I could have easily broken in if I wanted to, but that was just a line I didn't cross. The only work that I allowed myself to access was stuff that, it was just blown apart trailers or stuff floating downwind. And I felt that was okay. And it kills me in a way, because to me, the desert is a very sacred place. And it kills me to see people just leave their trash out there and spoil it. Also, I don't like all the solar farms that they're doing out there that just completely obliterate desert valleys. And yeah, okay, it's clean energy, right? That's a good thing, but they're fucking ruining the desert at the same time. What were you saying again? You got me on a tangent. But the ethics, right?
Just in terms of framing their experience or like presenting it as this heartbreaking thing.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as that goes, it's I feel like a curator at a museum or something, curating the ordering of them. And I know what's powerful and what needs to be there, and then it's just a matter of like what needs to be here and what needs to be after this, what needs to be before this, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Do the ethics change if it's a kid's material?
I don't know. I don't think there's. Is there kids material? I think the only kid material. What do you mean by kid material? Like photos of kids, or like the kids, like
Well, like I mean, like, hey, Jeff. I mean, like, the picture of, like, the kid's room. The kid isn't probably responsible for the parent's move out of the desert. Or the kid isn't responsible for the parent ditching all their possessions.
Yeah.
Does that change the ethics in your mind?
I mean, I guess it does. I never really thought about that. I mean, my thinking is maybe it's the kids are along for the ride, right? And it's the parents' responsibility to keep track of them and keep track of their belongings. And then something goes wrong or whatever, and then it's discarded. No, it doesn't change the ethics for me. Good question, though. Got me thinking. Hate that.
Hey, I disagree with you completely about the garbage in the desert.
Where are you? I can't see it. Okay, gotcha.
Hey, right here. But what about taking one of your books out to the desert where you found some of the stuff and tossing it into one of those trailers and grabbing a piece of trash and taking it back with you? Like, this for that. I'll take some of your trash and leave you this.
Yeah.
For the next person that comes along and just like, well, what the hell is that?
Right.
Somebody wrote a book about this place.
Say the first part of your question again, though. Like, you disagree?
No. I agree with you completely about there being
okay.
garbage, like that it's not good that there's garbage in the desert. So that's why I was saying, leave your book there, but grab a piece of garbage.
Yeah, I got you. It's nothing I would ever do because that would make me something like a conceptual artist, the road I don't want to go down again. But there was an artist I went to school with at Art Center in Pasadena, and she did things like that. She would find things in the desert, and then she would make little objects and just leave them out in the middle of nowhere, somewhere where nobody will ever find them, probably, and then document them and with the GPS location and everything. And that was her endeavor. It is interesting to think about. Yeah. Take a penny, leave a penny, right?
And one more question is, how far outside of the city or civilization did you have to go to first come to all the trash?
Most of the places I like to go to the most, if I just want to escape. I mean, I know all those areas. I know how to get away from people in society very well. That's my thing. But to find things like this, you have to be within close proximity to Los Angeles, Las Vegas. Like 29 Palms, where I found a lot of stuff, is on the outskirts of Los Angeles. So people's lives become broken somehow. They can't make it in the city anymore, or they don't want to, and they move out, to the closest location. And same thing with Las Vegas and Pahrump, Nevada. I found a lot of strange things in Pahrump. I'll show you, actually, maybe. No, you don't want to see it. You don't want to see it. But it's interesting. You kind of have to be within, kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but within proximity to a metropolitan area. If you get way the hell out there, then there's nothing. So you got to be kind of close, Yeah.
So, is this going out to the desert? Is it something that you purely have just done alone, or have you shared it? Taken other people with you to kind of go out and find things?
Yeah, I love being alone. I really do. But my uncle and a good friend of mine, Brian, who does the whole Griffin Moss Industries Incorporated, we go out there a lot together. And my uncle Ron he took me out with him and took me to some spots I didn't know about, because he's an artist and he uses this kind of work in his paintings in a different kind of fashion. But yeah, we'd go out together and he'd show me some spots, and mostly alone though. Mostly alone. It's that's important, I think, for me.
Hi. Would you talk a little bit about how you organized the materials within each section? I think each section is geographical, right? Where
Yes.
you found it?
Yes.
So, with ones with multiple pieces in the section, how did you think about curating that, arranging that?
I have to give credit to Dan Hoy, a poet that I very much admire. And you're going to have to remind me of your question because I'm going on a tangent again. But I ordered this book through Dan Hoy. He does this journal, Soft Targets, which is a brilliant journal. It's defunct now, unfortunately. But I assigned it to my students when I was teaching at Iowa. Dan, you know, you've been there. And this one girl, like, screwed him over. She paid for it, and then she said, no, the transaction is invalid, and then Dan got screwed over. And anyway, long story short, I was in contact with Dan, and I said, I'm very, very sorry my student screwed you over, and it shouldn't have happened. And anyways, like a thank you for all that, he sent me an unpublished manuscript of his that almost won a very, very big award, but didn't. And it will probably be published sometime soon, I hope. But his manuscript was broken up geographically. So it's similar to this book, 4 or 5 sections broken up like that. And I thought, dealing with a book like this, rather than just throwing all the pieces together in some random pile, it would make sense to, show the journey in a way. And like, here's where I was at this time, and here's what I found. Okay, now I went to this area, and this is what I found. And in a way, it's a portrait of the geography of the United States and the West. Yeah.
Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Dan.
First, I had a pair of questions. First, I think after going through the book, a lot of people probably wondered why certain things didn't make the book, because you showed us some pieces here, some pictures that didn't make it.
Yeah.
What made certain things, especially even interesting pieces, unworthy of making the book?
I'll tell you. This stuff doesn't make the book. All right, let me back up a little bit. I was at this compound outside of Las Vegas in Pahrump, and like really strange trailers. It was evident that 3 different families were living on the same piece of land, and it was so disturbing. This is like where I drew the line. There were body-sized holes dug in the ground. Some of them were filled with trash. Some of them were buried. Some of them were just empty. And I found like these kind of images from there. I still can't figure out that image. It haunts me. And so I found this scrapbook that this guy had, and he was cutting out faces from another family's photographs down the road, and sorry, I got to go off microphone. He even drew in like a phallic, penis. I don't know. He wanted to like have that impression there, which was weird. And then I got to this. I got to his scrapbook, and he was cutting out pornographic images, and and then cutting out like a boy from the other trailer down the road, and then putting him in the situation. It's like, this is his head, right? This is his scrapbook. And I could only take 2 photos of this before I had to get the hell out of there. And when I saw this, I was like looking over my shoulder, like who is around here? Like it shit scared me. And homosexual acts with children. It was a whole scrapbook of pedophilia and these kind of things. I won't linger on that too long. But yeah, that's where I draw the line. That was something that I'm like, oh my God, I found this. This is like the most crazy, bizarre thing I've ever seen. But first of all, I don't want to be caught with this because I could probably be arrested for it. I don't know. And it just creeped me out in a way different than the work in the book does.
And my second question, going through, I think, at least structurally, the centerpiece was that long Dear Tony letter that had the follow-ups.
Yeah.
Was that intended to be the centerpiece, and if so, why?
No, not really. It was just, I found a lot of her writings, and it was fascinating. It was, yeah, kind of the centerpiece. I think the centerpiece for me is the last section, east of Fallon, Nevada, because that's where I found the most of the work, most of the poetry. You know, I think that's where the core of the book lies for me, in that last section.
I think we have time for one more question. Do
Okay.
you want to take one more?
Yeah, if we got one more.
What's something you wish you would get asked?
What? I don't know. Ask me something. I like that question, though. Fucking smart guy.
Besides,
Sharp.
besides the fact that you've lived most of your life there, obviously that has a big impact, and that you like to spend time alone. Is there any other part of the desert, you know, maybe like aesthetically or like anything like that, like what draws you? What other things? What draws you to the desert?
Yeah, beyond the trash and residue that made this book possible, I have been absolutely fascinated with transitional areas, meaning the transitional areas between the Great Basin Desert and the Mojave Desert, and seeing sagebrush, which is indicative of the Great Basin, blend with like creosote and Joshua trees from the Mojave. I am fascinated with the transitional areas, and that's what, those are some of my favorite places. I always go with my parents, by myself, whatever. But just seeing like, and that's what kills me too about the Nevada test site, right? You guys know about that, maybe you don't. I don't. Nellis Air Force Base, and my folks and I camp out there a lot, and it kills me thinking that I will never be able to see how the Mojave and the Great Basin transitions within that military base because it's restricted access, and it just kills me that that's a part of the land and the world that I'll never get to see because, you know, military. But I love the transitional zones. Yeah.
Great.
All right.
Jeff Griffin will be happy to talk with you, sign books for you, would probably be happy to accept a beer from you. Thank you all for coming this evening, and thank you so much, Jeff Griffin.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes.
If anybody's interested, I'll be reading tomorrow night at Nubo Books, I believe it is, in Cedar Rapids. And it'll be a similar presentation, but I'll be talking about different stuff. So if you can make the drive up, I'd love to see you guys there. And yeah, thank you very much for coming out. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.